All right, let us begin our study. We are on page 14, lesson number 7. Page 14, lesson number 7. The study is on the life and times of Jacob and Esau. Last week, we did not get into deep into questions 2 through 6, which is Genesis chapter 24 as the main text. So we will spend our time this morning discussing that, Genesis chapter 24, really the whole chapter. Just as a brief recap, last week we're at the point of the story where Sarah has already died and Abraham has purchased some land from the Hittites to bury her there. We discussed how even though God had promised him that land, he still went forth through the process of respecting the people that lived there at that time, knowing that the promise was not fulfilled yet. And he was able to purchase that land and maintain a good relationship with those individuals. So we touched on that. Also, last week, we looked a little bit very briefly into Abraham and his desire for Isaac to be married. If you remember, he was asking his head servant to go back to his father's land to pick a wife from there. And he asked that he did not pick a wife from the Canaanites where they lived. He wanted to pick a wife that was from a relation to his father's heritage and not to the individuals of where he lived. Remember, God had asked him to move from where he was to an unknown place. So he is really the only one representing his bloodline. And why that is important is because, remember, the individuals that are inhabiting this land in Canaan were individuals from one of the other two sons of Noah who followed in disobedience after the flood. And Abraham is under the descendants of the son who followed in the right steps of the Lord post flood. So that was important for Abraham. He asked that his head servant took an oath. It was a little weird oath. We don't really do oaths like that. He told him to put his hand up underneath his thigh, which is kind of strange for us today, but that was their way. Some kids will spit in the palm of each hand and shake. Some people will cut each hand blood. Brothers, I don't know. They're doing touching thighs, so maybe that's a new way. Um, but the servant had an interesting point. The servant was basically saying this: hey, if I go there and this woman doesn't want to come back with me, what can I do? I can't make her come, right? I can't drag her back here. And he said, no, if she doesn't want to come, then that's it, because God is going to send an angel. And if she doesn't come, then you're released from your oath to me. Maybe God has another way, right? We're not going to force anything. So the servant said, okay. So the servant went, he grabbed 10 camels. He grabbed some gold nose rings, some bangles. And the interesting thing about this story is the servant himself prayed in verse 11 of Genesis 24, and he prayed for and on behalf of Abraham to be able to be blessed in this journey. He asked God that his journey would be successful on behalf of his master Abraham, and he asked some specifics of God. He specifically said that he won't know who God is going to choose for Isaac, Abraham's son. So what he was asking for was that when he went there and he found an area of water for a well, and he asked one of the women at the well for a drink, that the woman that would give him a drink, and then he asked for his camels and his camels would get a drink, would be the one that God chose for Isaac. So he's basically putting it all on God, right? He's not doing a match.com or eHarmony. He's not going to be going all through the town looking for characteristics and height and beauty and all of these sort of things, or smart and things like that, right? He's just literally saying, I don't know. I'm putting it on you. Whoever comes to me first at the well, I pray that that's who you choose for Isaac. So he's praying that for a successful trip. So then he goes on from there, and then that's kind of where we just started touching on last week. So the question number two was, why was Abraham so concerned about whom his son married? We touched on that because of lineage and what that lineage represented in terms of their relationship with God. So that's why it was so important. Abraham's focus was, again, God's promise was not that he would just have one son, but that his descendants will be innumerable. You can't even put a number on them. So in order to have that promise come true, he couldn't lose his son Isaac to the different idolatry and paganism and sinful nature of the other people that were around. Question 3 says, why would a bride from among the Canaanites not have been suitable for Isaac? Same concept, because it's about sustaining the heritage, not bloodline, right? It's not about bloodline. It was about the spiritual heritage and the promise that God had blessed them with and instructions to take hold of so that that promise can come true. Question number 4, how would his servants recognize Isaac's wife to be? How much would this tell him about the qualities of the girl? That's where I wanted to stay with that. Now, hopefully you've read, because we don't have time to read this, but hopefully you read how Rebecca, who is the girl that first interacted with the servant, how she interacted. Now, we heard he prayed that she would give the water to him and to the camels, and then God will reveal to him that that was the one. But how did she actually react in the story? How did she actually react? Okay.
How much would you tell about the qualities of the girl? The qualities would be her kindness, she was thoughtful, she was willing to do the work for somebody else. So like kind of hard working too, because she would come to the well versus sending her servants, or she would be like independent, like kind of working for herself or her family.
Good. Kindness of her heart, hard working, independent of her family.
And she didn't let him ask her for a drink of water. She offered it, and also offered to the
camels, right?
So that's how he knew that was the person.
And then also she ran. Verse 20 says she hastened, emptied her pitcher and trough, ran back to the well, drew water, and drew off for the camel. Right? Because he said, please let me drink a little water. She said, drink, my Lord, I will draw for you, and I will draw for your camels also, that they have a drink. Right? And remember, that was his prayer. So he didn't even say, right? And she offered that. So that servant mentality is a play on her personality and her characteristics.
This is why today we should be more hospitable with strangers, with anybody. As a child growing up, I'll give you a story. My grandmother always cooked extra meal, and she used to say, in case of somebody come, I have something to offer. And that did never make sense to me. Always cooking extra. And where we was living was by the main road, and we had an accident, and people was hungry. They came from the beach, this bus ride and all of that. And the first person to offer a plate of food for these people was my grandmother.
She was already prepared.
It was already prepared. And that is what we today should, always be hospitable, because that is one of the things that we don't know. We might be entertaining angels, So this was what she did. She was very hospitable to a stranger, and it worked in. This was God's plan.
It's important to understand that the relationship that God is going to cement with her and Isaac is extremely wealthy, right? She doesn't know the level of blessing that she's going to receive, because she will now be the mother of Jacob and Esau, and Jacob will go on to have 12 sons that will be the 12 tribes, right? She's going to be inserted into a lineage, right? The point is, she was already prepared for her blessing without knowing it, right? Too often we're praying for things, but we don't do any prep work on our side. We don't get our side prepared, right? We're waiting for God to do something for us. This woman was already prepared for someone to say, wow, this must be who God wants for my servant's son. Not, oh, hey, I'll learn. I'll learn to be better. I'll learn to be hospitable or nice. Because when he asked for a place to stay and did they have room, she said, we have plenty of room. Our house is plenty. You come back with us. So she was already hospitable. She was already kind. She was already had a servitude attitude and already loving. These are characteristics, right? It's hard to teach those characteristics to an adult. Like that usually is who you are or who you're not. And when you're trying to teach somebody that later in life, it makes it very difficult, right? Because you are already yourself. And people who are not noticing of others, they sometimes don't do it maliciously, but they would have just said, I didn't notice anybody was at the well. I just went and I drank. I didn't even see that guy. Like that's sometimes how we are. Somebody will be in need around us and we literally won't notice it. It's hard to teach that. That's why I say all the time, even for us, how vitally important it is for us to be able to understand what's going on around us. Like we as Christians have to do a better job of understanding what's going on around us, who's in need and who's not in need, because that is what Jesus was about, right? And this is another example of how this individual was already prepared for these things.
If you go back to the book of Acts with Lydia was prepared too, because remember, after her baptism, she invited them. She had room in her place to come, you know. So we have to have that mentality to be always hospitable, because you never know. Because when we're praying and we asking for something, we don't just pray and just leave it like that. You have to work towards that goal, you know. So God doing his part and you doing his part. So when the blessing comes, you're already ready and you're already alert.
So you're already prepared. Good. Okay. What about question number 5? How did Rebecca's family feel about her going away? What was her attitude? Now, in order to speak on that, first we have to understand that when he told this girl everything that God had said to him, right, in a prayer, because once he went through the motions and he seen this was it, he bowed down and he worshiped God and said, wow, you have sent me to my brother, my master's own family. Because it turns out that when he was asking her who her father was, it turned out to be Abraham's brother's grandson, right? So that was the lineage, right? So verse 27, blessed be the Lord God of the master of Abraham, who has not forsaken his mercy and his truth toward my master. As for me being on my way, the Lord led me to the house of my master's brethren. And then if you drop down to let's see here. Verse number 47. Then I asked her, whose daughter are you? And she said, the daughter of Bethel, Nahor's son, whom Milcah bore to him. And then if you drop down to verse 48, and I bowed my head and worshiped the Lord and blessed the Lord God of my master Abraham, who had led me in my way of truth to take the daughter of my master's brother for his son. And then if you look at the reference verse, we find out that that is the grandson. So that's the lineage that God brought him literally to his father's house, right? He was asking, just go get somebody from over where my father kind of lived. And God brought him to that direct lineage. She went and told her brother. Her brother ran back and said, hey, why are you standing over here? Why don't you come with us? So he came back with them and he said, let's eat. And the servant said, before I eat, let me give you the rundown. So he started from the oath to his prayer to Rebecca's actions and to him worshiping God. So the brother, which has an amazing response to me, says, go, because the servant said, before I eat, you tell me now if this can be, or send me on my way. The brother said, we can't say either way, because this is of God. Like, we're just people, right? God sent you here. This story is amazing. What can we say, right? So he said, let's eat and drink and be blessed that God has chosen her and she can go, right? So they had a meal, they stayed, right? The next day, what happened, right? So the plan was when they went to sleep that she would go with him. The next day, what happened? When he woke up, he said, okay, time to go. What did the brother and the mother say? Yay, let her stay maybe 10 days or so, or some more time, because we gonna miss her. And last night we were excited, we had party, but then we went to sleep and woke up and was like, you gonna take her away. So what did the servant say? No, let me go, because this is so exciting. They're gonna be waiting. Remember, I was sent for a purpose, right? If I'm here partying for 10 days, the person that sent me will be doing what? Waiting. And what else? Another W. Wondering, worrying. Hey, then maybe he lost, maybe he died, maybe God said no, maybe, right? How do I know? I'm just waiting. So then the brother said, and the mother said, okay, we'll ask her. And they asked Rebecca, you want to go with this man or not? What did she say? Yes, I'm gonna go now. It's time. And she got a couple gold bracelets, a gold nose ring. And she was like, yesterday I was picking water out of well. You want me to stay 10 more days? I'm out of here. And then the servant gave her all of this stuff. So now that cements the deal even more. Closet, wardrobe, gold stuff. And then he gave a lot to the brother and the mother, right? And then they parted ways. So it's interesting that sometimes we'll be so excited over something for others or even ourselves, and then we wake up the next day and understand the ramifications of that. And sometimes we say, right now, maybe next week I'll be happy, or I'll do this or that. And God said, no, we said last night now, remember? So it's done. But saying bye to loved ones on any level is difficult, right? 10 days wouldn't have mattered, right? It doesn't matter 10 days or 100 days. The day before it got to leave still would have been sad. But it's interesting that they gave her the authority of herself to say, do you want to go or not, right? They didn't force her to go. They didn't make her stay. And the servant didn't force her to go. Because remember, that was the servant's prayer, right? Because he was asking Abraham, how am I going to make somebody come back here? And he said, if she doesn't want to leave where she's from, then done. So the whole point was there was still free will and choice, even within God's divine plan. And that's how God works, right? Because God is still going to give opportunity for us to choose the right path, hoping that we do. That's the whole point of the plan of salvation, is there's two paths, but the hope is that you will look beyond what you can see to greater things. Now, remember the story of this. She knows that Abraham has money because he said to the brother, Abraham is very wealthy. Abraham gave everything to his son. So she knows that, but she knows nothing about the grand scheme of this entire plan of a promise to Abraham is in his descendants. So that's amazing right there, right? So they go, they're walking. Isaac went to meditate. Isaac is back where he is. He's sad because why? Why is Isaac sad? His mom just died, right? So he was out in the field somewhere meditating. And then when he was meditating, he looked up and he seen camels. And when he seen camels and the servant, the Rebecca seen Isaac first, right? And said, who is that? And the servant said, oh, that's my master. So she veiled herself, right? So now Isaac seen her as veiled, and then, hey, God did good thing. Now I have wife. So now I don't have to be sad about mom anymore. So they went to the mother's temple. They got married, and it said he was comforted from his mother's passing. It's important for us to look at the relationship that Isaac and Sarah had to have. Like, you got to understand, this woman had been waiting for a child for eternity, right? So to say that she loved her son would be a gross understatement. Like, she loved her son more than any mother in here probably loved your kids, because she thought she couldn't have any kids. Also, her child was supposed to be the gateway to a huge blessing. So with her passing, that must have been a huge void for Abraham and Isaac. Abraham had such a void. What did he do after Sarah passed away? He went and married like 3 other people, trying to get another Sarah. Maybe I combine some and get some more Sarahs, and he had some more kids. Then it was interesting that when Abraham died, who comes back into the story? Who buries Abraham? Ishmael comes back, right? And that goes back to God's promise to Hagar and Ishmael that, hey, I'm going to take care of you and don't worry. So they still had some sort of relationship, which was good, because Ishmael did have a good start of his life with Abraham, because Abraham loved that boy, right? So they still had a good relationship. So that's important for us to see. Question 6 says, how could one love a woman chosen in the way Rebecca was chosen, sight unseen? Because when it said that he married her in the mother's tent and he was comforted, it said Isaac loved her.
She saw of her was spiritual things, that he was over there praying and meditating. You know, it wasn't that he was sitting there hunting or like he's rich, you know, he could be doing anything to pass his time. But the first thing she saw was him in his spiritual like mindset too. I thought that was interesting. And the question was like, how could one love a woman like chosen? Because it was such a miracle, like it was like perfect from like God, literally like heaven sent kind of relationship. Because it was done through prayer, it was asked from God. It was possible to love in that way.
Good.
Just like looking at your beauty and beauty fades.
Right. So the first point was, the first thing she seen him doing was spiritual things, right? And then he seen her in her modesty, right? And then they were able to love, Denisha said, because it was divine. Like he was looking and she was looking hopefully at the spiritual connection in the path that they all had, and not just physical things like, hey, I was out at the well, I seen this hot guy, I seen this cute girl, we started laughing, and then I asked for water, she gave me some, then we had a lot in common, and we liked the same kind of sheep clothes, and then we got married, right? So it was something more that they recognized, that not themselves, somebody else was the one who was putting matching together. Yeah. So that's a good look at this love story. And then also you have to remember too is he still, even after God put all these things in motion, love is something that takes work and it takes time, and that's what he put in, right? When we say love today, we're talking about very watered down. Oh, I love ice cream. I love the movies, or I love pizza, right? Or people be dating 2 weeks and say, oh, I love you. Oh, I love you too, right? This concept of love in this instance is a process that 2 people have to willfully act towards, right? He had to do something within himself to actively love Rebecca, right? So that's something that speaks to him as a man and Abraham, because we know Abraham loved his wife, because when he went somewhere else, he said, oh, say you're my brother, my sister, and I'm your brother because you're too beautiful. They're going to kill me, right? So he had a very unique relationship with his wife. So it would be no surprise that his son would have a good relationship with his mother, and instilling in him how to have a relationship with women. And then obviously he would love. And remember, his father has an extremely good relationship with God Almighty, who is love. And he understood and recognized those things as well. So his family was built on the foundation of spiritual love. Abraham loved God so much, he was willing to sacrifice Isaac. We look at that as a bad thing, but what would that have done to Isaac in his faith in terms of waiting for someone that God picked? He would say, whatever my dad says that God said must be right way, because my dad was ready to kill me, even thinking maybe God would raise me back from the dead. How could it be? So he had that level of interaction with spiritual love his whole life.
When you do this lesson and you study it, it all go back from the beginning with God's plan. Because he worked this plan that his son could come to die for us. You know, and this is amazing to me when he always go back in the beginning. It was not so, because he started in the beginning. His plan was from the beginning for his son to come, and nothing could have stopped that. He have a plan and he worked through his plan. And if he didn't work through this plan, we wouldn't have been here today.
Exactly. So that's a very good point. Very, very good. Okay, go to chapter 25. We already talked about Abraham's second wife. What about how he treated his kids? What did he give them opposed to what he gave Isaac? Because the Bible says in 25, he gave whatever he gave Isaac first. Then he talked about the other one.
Will he give them less again?
Verse 6, right? Abraham gave gifts to the sons, the concubines which Abraham had while he was still living. He sent them eastward away from Isaac, right? But he gave Isaac what? All that he had, right? So why would that be? Right. Yeah, they knew that these kids were promised, right? Because he said specifically now after that, oh, it must be from Abraham's body. So let's have Ishmael. That I was talking about Sarah. You confusing. So now they understand that. So he didn't want to make the same mistake and have jealousy or anything like that happen, right? Question 9 says, who came together at the death of Abraham? That's a blessing and an amazing story, I find. Isaac and Ishmael. And then the Bible gives a summary of Ishmael's descendants, and they were east of Egypt, which is extremely important as we go on in Israelite story. And then it gives a breakdown of where Isaac lives, which will come into play in later lessons. Question 10 says, summarize the importance of Abraham and God's overall purpose. This is speaking to what Beulah's comments was. Like, how important is Abraham to God's overall purpose to Adam and Eve? Remember that all of this, even Abraham, is just a piece into God's overall purpose. God's purpose and plan didn't start with Abraham. That's what's so amazing about the Israelites during Jesus's time, right? That's what Jesus or Moses, looking at Moses and Abraham, there was something in place even before Abraham, before Noah and Eve, right? That's Jesus is going to the main purpose. They're thinking, oh, Abraham is our father. And Jesus said, oh, your father is the devil. Then they said, oh, Moses is the only one who gives us law, right? So they were picking out these people instead of focusing on the overall purpose. So what does Abraham play in that?
Like Ishmael was 40 when he found Rebecca. Like when they got married. Today, 40 years is a long time.
It's old.
Yeah, we would say like, you're 40 and you're not married yet, you know. And we later on reading the story, like Rebecca was barren too. He had to pray to God for children, you know. So like whatever was repeated in Abraham's life happened to him. So that's why his faith was so big.
Yeah.
So later on.
It's amazing that Isaac and Rebecca's story is a lot like Abraham and Sarah, right? Because she was barren and he prayed for her and God said, okay, now think of that dynamic, right? Isaac is the one who in his heart that he is now the gatekeeper. His mother and father died, so he's the one, right? And his wife can't have kids. So instead of coming up with some scheme, he goes to the source and says, oh, God was able to raise me from the dead even, right? And knowing that I have no other wife around here and if I die, there's no lineage, God must have a better way. So he went back to the source. He prayed that his wife would be able to have kids. And the Bible says what? God said, okay, right? So he looked at the growth between Abraham and Sarah's relationship and Isaac and Rebecca's relationship, which goes to play to parenting. Like too often parents parent in a way like, well, I want to hide from my kids the wrong that I did, right? But he couldn't hide that from Isaac because of Ishmael. Like you can't hide. Isaac know he have a brother, so he know he did the wrong thing. And then when we just said when it was time for Abraham to die, Abraham, while he was still living, divvied up to the sons and his kids the right way so that there would be nothing for interpretation. So he understood that relationship. Right. Mm-hmm.
I thought that was like really amazing, the story of growth, and then like you learn from your dad's mistake and actually ask God.
Yeah, he did a new way. The funny thing is, then he did exactly what Dad did, because he went somewhere, the Philistine area, right? And he said, "Hey, you too hot." Because as soon as they see how hot you are, they're gonna say, "Hey, she hot. Let's take her and kill this guy." So say you're my sister. Yeah, I think he said hot in whatever language they were talking. Yeah. Then he said, King was looking one day and said, "Hey, what the brother and sister doing?" And it said Isaac was caressing Rebecca. Then he said, "Hey, you lying to us. You said this your sister." And he said, "Oh, yeah, sorry, because she's so beautiful. And that's why I was scared." And he said, "But you crazy, because you could have brought sin to us, because one of my guys could have slept with this woman. And then we would have had shame." So he said to the whole area, no one do any harm to this man or his wife, right? So the fear was still there because of life, right? We're reading these things as sentences. Just because he had a high moment and prayed for his wife that she would have kids and God bless, years went by. So you live your life. Just like you could have a great worship service today and tomorrow have a bad spiritual day, right? Someone can say, "Hey, remember yesterday? Oh yeah, you're right," and try to do better. But that's how life is. Don't read so fast. You're saying, "Oh man, how's this guy 1 minute praying for his barren wife, the next minute lying about his relationship?" Because time is going by and life gets in the way. Like life blinds us from our bigger purpose. Mom, you have something?
Yeah, and I think that happens all the time. I think, when we go through our peaks and valleys in our life, it's easy to rely and call on God. And then as soon as he blesses us, then we forget and we revert back to just in the moment. And it's really in the moment that we go back to what we think is our safety. And sometimes we don't even think about it. It's just like, you say the wrong thing. You're like, "Oh, why did I say that?" Or, "Oh, why did I do that?" So I think too often it happens to us all the time. And it's just, we have to get beyond that. And I know for myself, sometimes I'm like, "God, help me to always think of the right thing first," right? Help me think of the right thing first, respond the right way first, and then not 2 seconds later or, an hour later and say, "You know what, I should have said this, or I should have done that." But it's easy in the moment. And I think, and maybe, for them it was like, well, if we say we're siblings as opposed to husband and wife, the lesser of the two evils may have been that someone would have taken her or slept with her, as opposed to killing them.
Right. So they surmised that would be at least better than nothing, right? Like better than dying, that would be the better way.
Right.
So that's important for us to look at their relationship in that way. If you look at, go ahead.
That's the other thing, right? So it's not, so they agree, I'm assuming they agree that the lesser of the two evils would be, okay, if we say this, we're siblings, and we're not married, then this is gonna work out. And we do that, right? In a relationship, it's like, okay, so what do you think? So if we do this, okay, it's not gonna be so good, but we'll go along with it.
Right.
Forgetting that no matter what, God is gonna bring us through the situation. And it may be bad, right? And so death may have been there, but we don't really want to die, right? But
yeah, that's the thing though. Their faith in that part was low because there could not be death, because why? There was no kid yet.
Yes, he had a promise.
There was no kid yet.
But that's like Abraham. He forgot about the promise in the moment and did something contrary to what God asked.
Same as David, right? David was anointed when he was a shepherd boy. So why he running? Oh, he's gonna kill me. How you gonna be dead king? But you think of life instead of the promise, right? So Peter said after the rich young ruler left and hung his head, hey, what about us? What can we get? You just said it's harder for a rich man to get into heaven than a camel to walk through eye of a needle. And Jesus said there's nobody who's left these worldly things for my sake that won't receive in this life and even more the next. That's the promise. But we think what? Oh, I got to go get a better job and work on Sunday, Wednesday. Why? What about what Jesus said you're going to receive in this life and even more? But he did say this life too. Oh, because it's life. I have bills. And only day they're hiring is Sunday and Wednesday. So that's what I got to do. We come up with these things, neglecting the promise that was already made for us. Ruby and then Mama.
Okay, just like when Isaac, when Rebecca get the two kids, in verse 23, when God said to her, it will be two nations in her womb, right? And the older one will serve the youngest one. So she didn't even have to plot the deception that she did, because God already said that the older one will serve the younger one, right? So when they went and do what they do to steal the birthright from the other one, God had already
prophesied what would happen, right? See, that's why I say all the time, like for our lives, we don't understand that when we do things, that it may reroute us. Like when you're using GPS, it says take a left, you take a right instead. It'll still get you back, but it's gonna take what? Longer. Like sometimes we don't understand your life is literally like that. Like you don't know where you could have been today, December 14th, if had you done things different in 2013. Maybe some random day, we don't even remember what that day was. God is saying, I had to take the rest of 2013 and all of 2014 just to get you to December 14th, but you could have been there the next day. You could have been where you are last year the next day, but you went another way. We said, take a left. You said, no, I want to go backwards. So we had to reroute, and that rerouting took time. That's where we missed. So that's a good study, definitely for next class.
And then thinking about that, when you think about our lives today, because I often wonder, are we so different from the Old Testament characters? And I don't think so. And too often I think we think, oh, if I was Abraham, or if I was Sarah, or if I was Isaac, if I were Rebecca, we would have done X, Y, and Z. But then I think about the promise that God has given to us. And he says to us, if we remain faithful, right, we have a crown of glory stored up for us in heaven. Why is it then when things get rough, and he says you'll have trials and tribulations in this life. So why is it then when those things come and we get those storms in our lives and the wind blows, then why is it, because we've got a promise just like Abraham, Isaac, why is it then that we turn away?
Yeah, we get defeated.
We knowing that, this is a fleeting moment because we've already got a promise, right? And we just keep our hand on the plow. But then too often we let life happen and we decide, you know what, I'm going to give up. Did we forget the promise that was made to us?
Yeah. That's why it's hard for us, because life gets in the way, right? No matter how spiritual you are, you still got to open your eyelids and see the world. Right? It's not like when you become a Christian, you stop seeing physical and now you could start seeing angels and demons. Now you would be more focused if you seen demons in here, right? But it can't be like that. So good. Thanks for all your comments. Next class, we'll get more into depth for this, into the next comments of some of the last ones we were making, and we will be able to dig deeper. But thank you for a good class. Okay, I need before we start the next one. Where's the speaker? Okay, let me